99.9% of the American people don't realize that the CCP is a very small organization, although it controls all of China. They happen to think that 1.4 billion Chinese are all communists, part of the CCP. They don't realize it's a very small group of under 100 million, and in that group, only a couple thousand matter. They also didn't realize that they're the richest families, the factions are the richest families on earth that have stolen all the profits and all the wealth out of China for themselves. So that's an awakening of the American people. That's why every day we must continue to press. One thing on War Room, Miles's great song, Take Down the CCP, we played as our out music and our in music. That's become a huge hit for the American people. And now they start to think, little kids sing it, people understand it's Take Down the CCP, that the CCP is not the legitimate government of the Chinese people. What we have to do is that constantly, the way to get the world to respond is for the new federal state to take more of a role. I'm a huge believer, and I've talked to Miles about this, like for instance in America, that the young Chinese American citizens now have to get engaged in active politics. In New York City alone, the number of Chinese that we have, Chinese American citizens, is huge. They can become a major political force. They already, throughout the country, throughout every country they're in, that the engagement in democratic politics, I think, is the next step. And it's why? It's to show the world that Chinese people can govern themselves and put a lie to that. So I think the new federal state, with everything that we're doing, the whistleblower movement, on the Rule of Law Society and Foundation, of all the work different fighters are doing in different companies, the next stage is actually more active political engagement in your home countries to learn the basics of democracy, to learn the basics of political organizing, to learn the basics of debate and free speech. You know, you have a platform like Getter, now's the time to use it. So I think the future here, when I look out and see what Miles calls a new China, new Chinese, I think it's incredibly empowering. I think it's empowering to the countries where the diaspora, the Chinese people, have been forced from their homeland to go to repatriate.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. And you have constantly mentioned Getter, our platform, and the chance, the opportunity that we have as citizens of the new federal state of China here to speak publicly against the Chinese Communist Party. And I know that you have profound experience in medias and in your war room. So what advice that you could give to supporters of the new federal state of China?
Here's the number one thing I would do. If you go to Getter, what I see when I have people, friends or colleagues or people in politics or in culture or in Wall Street, when they join Getter, one of the first things they're surprised at is how many Chinese citizens, how many Chinese people come on and join and follow them and then start to comment in their feeds. The number one thing you can do right now is just follow a wide range of people. You know, what Jason Miller and the team at Getter have done is amazing. Whether it's Brazil, France, Italy, the United Kingdom, right, Japan, all over the world, Australia, you have actual people of like-minded tendencies, people that are sovereigntists, people that believe in free speech. What I would do is simply start to follow those guys and put comments in. You're going to find out, you learn so much, and also people are going to follow you back. You're going to build your followings. Every person on Getter, every Chinese on Getter right now should have 100,000 followers. The way to do that is to start to follow people throughout the world. You'll learn a lot, but you'll also teach a lot. Remember, everybody looks to you to teach us what new China and the new Chinese are. And that's why Getter's your platform to talk to the entire world. So I would say use it, put up more posts, attach more news, start to follow people, build your own followings, but not just that, spread the word out there about the Chinese Communist Party, the evils of the Chinese Communist Party, and the power and the decency and the goodness of the Chinese people. You do that, and it's Getter's an amazing platform. And Jason's done a fantastic job, and now it's time for all of us to go to work. And not just that, get all of your friends to sign up. Get all your colleagues to sign up. Get everybody at your businesses to sign up. Make this the most robust, not a toxic environment like Twitter, but a robust, healthy environment for free speech throughout the world.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. You talk a lot about, the engagement and what kind of actions that we should be delivered, in the future as supporters and as people who want to take down the CCP and spread out the influence. So if we are sending out all these messages, what core content or what specific method that we should use to make this message most powerful?
You see, here's the thing. I think what Getter provides is right now, Getter, Jason and the team have just come up with Vision, right? It was like a TikTok. That's for the younger people, for behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. You've got the ability they're going to have ability to direct messages. You directly talk to people, right, throughout the world. They're going to have the ability to attach all the news articles. You've got the platform provides right now, and it's growing every day with different things. They're going to have payment services and all that. Just start to use it. Remember, right now, think about it for a second. Only less than 1% of people in China know anything about Tiananmen Square. Why? The evil CCP doesn't want anybody to know about Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square is like Lexington or Concord to Americans. Our heroes at Lexington and Concord that day that took the first shots at the British Empire, although we don't know all their names, they're revered in America as the beginning of our revolution, even before the country was formed, a year before the Declaration of Independence, right? The Tiananmen Square is hero. Remember the Empress of Liberty, that powerful, powerful, powerful statue made by the patriots in Tiananmen Square to resemble the Statue of Liberty. The whole world needs to know that. And the way to know that is to continue to use your social media just to put out what you're doing every day. Remember, the work you're doing every day is the work of what a free people do. You're building companies, you're raising families, you're teaching your children about cultural values, you're adding to society. The lie of the Chinese Communist Party is that, the Chinese are too chaotic and too disorganized to govern themselves. We have to do it for them. Look at Hong Kong, look at Taiwan, look at the Chinese people in the diaspora in every nation on earth, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, France. Look at all of it. They're contributing members of society in a positive way. And that's what Getter gives that platform, to just give the message of your life every day. If you give that message, the Chinese Communist Party cannot withstand that. It puts to a lie the central thesis, and it kills their legitimacy every day. Remember, all Wan Xishan does right now is worry about the legitimacy of the CCP. He understands what Mao Zedong is doing. He understands what this platform is. He understands what these new companies mean. Just continue to pound your message every day of your decency, your hardworking nature, right? Your resolve, your good citizenship. Just let people just see your lives every day on Getter and a social media platform. And trust me, next year, Beijing.
Wow. How powerful. Thank you so much, Mr. Ran. And a lot of supporters are getting excited, as we engage more. So my next question goes, as we have kind of like increasing engagement and activities on social media and an appearance, more and more supporters and citizens from the new federal state of China, that they stand in front of the stage and they stand in front of the camera. They speak against why they want to take down the CCP, why they're choosing whistleblowers movement, and why they're believing the potential success of the new federal state of China. So what type of activities or engagement that we should be facing or getting prepared with the international community?
Look, I think we're very quickly going to go and start to get official recognition of the new federal state. When the new Congress takes over, it's going to be a top priority. But as importantly, use Getter, and particularly the live stream and the new vision, to push your message out there about your lives. That will make countries and organizations want to officially recognize the new federal state. The power of the Getter live stream. The power. Remember, I get interviewed by the world's news every week.
Right.
The single best show that I do on a weekly basis is the G News show from the UK group. Every Wednesday at about 12 noon to 1 o'clock. They ask every week. It's the best questions. It's the most reflective questions. This is the Chinese people, right? They've not been trained. They've taught themselves. It's the single best news show I do in the entire week, and I do them all, right? How did that happen? What we need is everybody in the new federal state ought to have a podcast. Everybody ought to be up on live. You ought to be on Vision. You ought to be talking about the issues you find important, in whatever country you're living in now, whether it's New Zealand, Japan, the United States, France, whatever it is. What you believe in the local politics, what you're working on, how you're raising your family. The strength is your lived experience. When people sit there and go, look at these Chinese, they're incredible. They add to our society, they add to our culture, they add to our nation. How can they sit there and say they can't be governed by themselves? Remember, 1.4 billion people in the oldest and arguably the greatest civilization on earth are enslaved. And the modern world just looks the other way. Whether it's the Olympics or Wall Street or the global woke corporations, they look the other way. At the biggest crime of the 21st century, which is still the underlying crime, the unfinished work of the great wars of the 20th century. Remember, 200 million people died and the Chinese people are still enslaved. How did that happen? Your daily work, your lived experience, and making sure the world sees that is the number one thing to take that down peacefully.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. I want to kind of like circle back a little bit because I think you mentioned the formal recognition of the new federal state of China. So my question is, a lot of supporters are having the same question with, altogether. What do you see of the future of formal recognition of the new federal state of China? And do you believe that the new federal state of China would receive that recognition before we actually take down the CCP?
Look, I hope that we take down the CCP within the next year, and it's within our grasp to do that. Don't think that they're strong, they're weak. They're weak because they're doing moves like locking down 400 million people. If they were strong, they would not do the lockdowns in China today, right? If they were strong, they would tell the world the reality of what's going on in China. If they were strong, they would not have a social credit score. If they were strong, they would not have slave labor camps. Everything they do is their weakness. Now, it's incumbent upon us. I think we can make tremendous inroads throughout the next year in trying to get formal recognition, but that's a group effort, right? And we should look at some NGOs, some maybe other organizations to try to get that. The pressure against those organizations by the CCP will be immense because remember, the first group that recognizes the new federal state will essentially begin the beginning of a fuse that will blow up on Beijing. So it's going to be tough, but I think it's doable. I think we've got to start to work. That being said, on the formal recognition, the more powerful element in myself over the coming year.
Wow. Thank you so much for such a powerful sharing with us. I think all of the supporters, and especially for those who currently live in mainland and they're using VPN to watch our, the whole entire broadcast today. Do you have any particular message that you want to, be delivered to them? I think a lot of people are up really late just to see tonight's broadcast.
Look, your struggle is the world's struggle. Remember, the world cannot free the United States right now. All of the problems in the United States, and we have many. If you go back, the source of that is still Beijing. The United States is not totally free until you're free. And now throughout the world, I can tell you, in world capitals, in parliaments throughout the world, in executive branches throughout the world, in cultural institutions, in news organizations, people are being forced to understand that you're in slavery and in bondage to a transnational criminal organization. So everything that you do, everything that's done outside of here is to support your freedom. At the end of the day, only the Chinese people, only Lao Beijing can bring about their freedom, right? People in the West, others can assist and help and be there and fight that fight, but only you can free yourself. And that day is not too far in the future. The central lies of the Chinese Communist Party, your enslavement, your bondage is not acceptable in a modern society, and certainly not acceptable to the people of the world. So remember, there are people out there that understand your cause, that pray for you every day, and more importantly, even praying, work in your behalf every day to try to show God that we're on the side of the angels, which is the side of the Lao Beijing.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Bannon. It's truly an honor. I think a lot of people are having the same feeling, seeing us together and seeing all these worlds and projection of the future. A lot of people are getting excited, and more people are increasingly becoming aware of our group and actually getting more participation and activities taking place here. So when you first met Mr. Mao's school, were you aware that he is going to start viewing the new federal state of China with you?
Not when I first met, but I knew that Miles was a very special individual in that he was able to speak so directly about the plight of the Chinese people and had given up. I saw a guy who could, he had such wealth, he could go do anything he wanted in the world, and he dedicated his life. To the Chinese people and to freeing the Chinese people. The most important thing in the many years I've known Miles, I spent 100 days on Miles' ship as we worked through last summer. And I have never seen an individual. I work very hard. I'm very proud of how hard I work. I come from a working class family that work was really the basics of the family values. Miles is the hardest working individual I've ever seen. He is working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that work is focused on freeing his fellow countrymen, Lao Baijing. I've never seen anything like it, and it inspires me. And so all the people that talk nonsense about Miles and Miles this, Miles that, I will tell you, show me anything that Miles has said to the West and to America that has warned us exactly what's going to happen and how dangerous the Chinese Communist Party is, and show me any person in the world, in any country of the world, that works harder for his fellow countrymen than Miles Guo. It doesn't exist, and I've seen them all, and I've met them all. And Miles Guo is the hardest working, and just incredible. And I do want to take a little credit for making Miles Guo the great singer he is, but that's a story for another day.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon, and it's truly, feel honored and pleasure, to have this conversation. You talk a lot about your kind of like your experience staying with Mr. Miles Guo, and then you have said that a lot of things and a lot of the claims that you and Mr. Miles Guo made over the past 5 years are not controversial anymore today. So where do you see, the impending economic crisis, especially with the vaccination disaster, and also, truth about the CCP virus, and those things were very, very much popular on your war room as well. Where do you see the public, future when we're facing
I think there's if you just look in the United States with the problems with inflation, the problems of trying to wring inflation out of there, but most importantly, nobody's paying attention to essentially the collapse of the Chinese economy. This doesn't make sense how they locked down and why they locked down 400 million people for as long as they did. And now they pretend like, we didn't lock anybody down. Something is deeply wrong in China, right? And we know this. The economy is basically imploding. Unemployment with youth is out of control. They still have the massive problem with real estate. There's something deeply wrong at the core of the Chinese economy. And what that is that is not really economy. It's really run by a gangster organization. Remember that gangster organization's number one priority is not helping the Chinese people. It's grabbing as much wealth as they can get and get it out of the country as quickly as possible and put it into real estate here in New York City and in West London, right? That's their number one objective, is to take the wealth and the hard work off the sweat of the brow of the Chinese people who work for slave wages and work in slave conditions. It's to take that wealth and to be done to their own people and what they've done to the world. And I think we're heading to an economic catastrophe. But that catastrophe, I think may actually help, because I think it's going to wash away the Chinese Communist Party. Once the material nature of the atheistic, materialistic Chinese Communist Party implodes onto Lao Baijing, I think you'll see a change, and a big change coming in Beijing.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, Mr. Guo also speaks a lot about the impending economic crisis, and I think that's a question that we all concern a lot. And especially, especially with the Lao Baixing you mentioned in China, that they are living under the criminal quarantine conducted by the Chinese Communist Party. So how do you project themselves in the future if they are not able to flee out from China? And how can you protect themselves and correspond to the CCP spreads?
I think it's got to be continue to do what we're doing here on the outside and using the VPN to get the word. Look, I would love to be able to wave a magic wand, and Miles would too, and think it's all going to be better. But this organization,
I think I feel, I always feel that we need to do more and more each day to support these supporters in China, and more each day to spread out the words for everyone, so that we can, we are the ones who can, kind of like giving out the ways to tell people how to protect themselves and then get prepared for the upcoming dark days. And this is also the message that Mr. Guo had delivered in 2017.
Yes.
Right? So every claims that you and Mr. Guo made over the past few years are not controversial anymore these days. So back to the one last question. We're running a little bit out of time.
Okay.
So do you see the foreign recognition, the sovereign recognition of the new federal state of China would be upcoming within, the near years?
I think it's an effort we have to undertake, but I don't want to mislead anybody. It's going to be very difficult, and here's why. The Chinese Communist Party is going to play smash mouth any organization in the world, any country in the world that tries to recognize the new federal state. That they will understand by doing that will be the beginning of the end for them. So the pressure against these organizations, the pressure against the people at new federal state trying to do it, the pressure against these countries is going to be enormous, but we must start that effort. And here's what I'm saying. If you look back 2 years ago, we started this on Miles' boat, right, in New York Harbor. If you look at last year, we were at the World Trade Center, right, with a rented space with a fantastic, and now you see here in our own corporate headquarters with vibrant, great young Chinese building great companies. If you think we got a digital currency, there's a major social media platform that can compete with Twitter. There's a 24-hour news organization. There's a world-class fashion, and much, much more. There's all types of other companies that started and people working on. If you see that's accomplished essentially in a year, you sit there and go, this is incredible, right? Or the last 15 or 18 months is incredible. So nothing can stop us. The only thing that can stop us is ourselves. So if we keep working and keep working hard and make it a priority, good things are going to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon, for joining us today. Nothing can stop us, folks. Take down the CCP.
Take down the CCP.
Take down the CCP.
Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP.
坚守自由信仰，并天赋平等不退让，家国父兄立豪杰，其荣耀今时光。我辈如何浴火重生希望？小小萤火炬成寒，勇敢对天黑暗，看喜马拉雅。希望之光，醒来吧，光明重回大地，守护着神的国度，鸟语花香，歌唱吧。
好，大家这个镜头转过来了啊，在我前面呢，这是一个蓝脊的一条鱼啊，金枪鱼。那么这鱼不是我钓的啊，也不是我杀的，要这个鱼报仇去找钓鱼的去啊。这个鱼是墨镜定的，长腿哥定的，吃大家吃，我也吃。这个金枪鱼今天是很特别的。就是金枪鱼，现在几乎全世界我们看到吃的鱼呢，99%全都是人工养的，这个是真的是在合法的国际海域钓来的，大概140磅啊蓝脊。大家看到就这个鱼的后面，真的看到那么漂亮，不舍得吃了。这个金色的羽翼啊，也就是我们人走到的，就是这小脑的中区跟它连接摆动的，就这个地方是很重要的。啊，用咱们人讲人话来说，方向标，你就别看这一点儿，这个在海里面发出的东西，它晚上是不同的光的， 啊，因为我那时候去潜水去，我这看过很多这个，它完全不一样的。还有这个是它绝对的走前面水上下起伏，它是起关键作用的。那么这个鱼很多日本吃，有很多人反对啊，这个但是呢，如果是不吃的话，这个也是会成灾的。大家也知道它有一个轮回，我曾经也反对吃过这个。后来我也逐渐吃了，但我不鼓励吃啊。但今天是2周年新中国联邦纪念呢，咱们大家在没吃素之前，你今天可以尽情的享受这个蓝鲫。我跟大家讲过啊，这个金枪鱼里边它分的是什么？它分的是气候。最关键什么气候有什么鱼，特别是今天我们看到的钓到的鱼当中，在西班牙还有在巴哈马岛。包括在日本，它只是有限度的有。这个期间当有的时候呢，如果在这个合适的时间钓到的话，它是非常非常难得的。这是为什么在日本像这个鱼，今天咱买这个价格，如果到日本去是很高很高的价格啊。那么今天咱们真的是在2周前定的，就钓到了这条鱼。那么这个是完全自然的。大家他已经死了，你不吃也是不好意思。咱今天对他最好的尊敬就是吃了他。我一说艾伦就笑了，艾伦老师啊，这一说就哎，你要不要给这鱼理下发得吃啊？我这头发已经理了，一理也最多几下。所以说兄弟姐妹们，今天这个鱼呢是一个我们大家今天是个礼物吧，上天赐给新中国联邦的礼物，我们救下了。这个亿万的生命啊，吃条鱼还是可以的，可以的，所以尽情的吃，有什么罪责我担着啊！上天呐，大地啊，有事找我。这是日本的Kevin，Welcome Sir，Welcome， 这是日本来的师傅啊，今天请来的是开刀的，你记住这个鱼可不容易切了啊，因为你切这个鱼这个头它要剁。你看到吗？他要剁 ，please， yeah，please， 人家害怕。